The year was 1247. A crowd gathered in the central square of Paris, whispering among themselves as they watched a young woman being led by the local authorities. The crime that had brought her there was neither murder nor theft. It was something that medieval society considered even more grievous. Adultery. Marguerite d'Anjou had been discovered in flagrante delicto, betraying her merchant husband. What would follow in the next few hours was a public spectacle designed to serve as a warning to all women in the city. In medieval Europe, marriage was not merely a personal contract, but an institution that sustained the entire social structure. When this institution was violated by female adultery, the punishment was not only severe, but also publicly exemplary. Today, we reveal the 5 most brutal punishments reserved for adulterous women in the Middle Ages. Practices so extreme that they were gradually abandoned as society evolved toward more humanitarian concepts of justice. The first of these punishments was stoning, a practice that extended from biblical times into medieval European courts. In the year 1322, in a small village in Germany, Agnes von Braun was condemned to this fate after being discovered in adultery with the son of a local nobleman. The process of medieval stoning was meticulously organized by local authorities. The accused was taken outside the city walls, symbolizing her expulsion from the Christian community. The procedure followed specific rituals established by both civil law and the religious precepts of the time. The execution began with the betrayed husband, who had the responsibility of initiating the process. Family members followed, then neighbors, and finally, other citizens. The objective was not only to apply capital punishment, but to publicly demonstrate the consequences of breaking matrimonial vows. Agnes von Braun faced her destiny according to the records of the time, which document these practices as part of the medieval judicial system. Chroniclers describe how the process was conducted according to local laws, reflecting the mentalities and beliefs of an era very different from our own. Stoning represented community participation in the application of justice. Each person who participated became part of the judicial system, creating a social mechanism that reinforced established matrimonial norms. It was participatory justice as understood in that historical period. The second punishment was drowning, particularly common in coastal regions and areas near rivers. In the year 1438, in the city of Venice, Caterina Morosini was condemned to this fate after a case that scandalized local society. The Venetian method involved specific procedures established by the authorities of the Republic. The condemned woman was subjected to a process that the laws of the time considered appropriate for crimes of this nature. The symbolism was important. Water represented purification and spiritual renewal. In other regions, different methods were used, but always within the legal parameters established by local authorities. The process was conducted according to protocols that varied between different jurisdictions, but maintained the same objective of applying the penalty established by law. Caterina Morosini faced her sentence as documented by historical records. Contemporary witnesses recorded the events, allowing modern historians to understand how the medieval judicial system functioned in cases of adultery. Drowning was considered a form of purification by the elements. Water, the symbol of baptism and renewal, was seen as a means of spiritual cleansing. It was a punishment that combined religious symbolism with the application of civil law, reflecting the interconnection between church and state in the medieval period. The third punishment was death at the stake, applied especially when adultery was combined with other accusations. In the year 1512, in a small town in France, Marie Dubois was condemned to the flames after being accused not only of adultery, but also of practices considered heretical. The preparation for this punishment was an elaborate ritual conducted by ecclesiastical and civil authorities. The condemned participated in specific ceremonies established by the protocols of the time, including processions through the city streets that served both for the application of justice and for public education. In the central square, a structure had been carefully constructed according to technical specifications developed over centuries. The process followed established procedures that varied slightly between different regions, but maintained the same fundamental principles. Marie Dubois faced her sentence with an attitude that impressed witnesses of the time. Chroniclers record that she maintained her composure until the end, demonstrating the psychological complexity of these historical events and how different individuals reacted to extreme circumstances. The stake was considered the most spiritually significant punishment, as fire was seen as the supreme purifying element. It was believed that the flames offered a final opportunity for spiritual redemption. Many spectators participated in prayers during the process, reflecting the religious beliefs of the time. The fourth punishment was immurement, a form of confinement that resulted in slow death. In the year 1395 in England, Lady Eleanor de Montfort was condemned to this punishment after a scandal that shook the local nobility. Immurement involved the construction of an extremely small cell just sufficient for basic confinement. The condemned was placed in this space with minimal provisions, and then the entrance was permanently sealed. It was considered a way to allow prolonged spiritual reflection. The application of this punishment followed specific protocols that varied between different jurisdictions. Authorities left small openings for ventilation, and so that prayers could be offered for the soul of the condemned, reflecting the religious mentality of the time. Lady Eleanor remained in her cell for several days, as documented by historical records. Local residents reported the events according to their perspectives, providing modern historians with insights into how these practices were perceived by the contemporary population. Immurement was seen as an opportunity for intense spiritual contemplation before death. It was considered a method that offered time for repentance and reconciliation with religious precepts, reflecting the importance of spiritual salvation in the medieval mindset. The fifth punishment was quartering, reserved for cases involving people of high social position whose adultery was interpreted as political treason. In the year 1467 in Scotland, Lady Catherine Douglas faced this destiny after a case that was considered harmful to the interests of the realm. The process of quartering followed specific protocols established for crimes of high treason. It was a punishment that combined civil and political elements, reflecting how the adultery of nobles was seen not only as a personal crime, but as a threat to political stability. The application of this sentence involved complex procedures conducted by specially designated authorities. The process was meticulously documented, providing detailed historical records about how the judicial system functioned for crimes of this magnitude. Lady Catherine Douglas faced her sentence according to the protocols established by Scottish law of the time. Historical records document how these punishments were applied and how different individuals reacted to circumstances, offering valuable perspectives on the medieval mentality. The consequences of this punishment served as a maximum public warning. It was a clear demonstration of the consequences of actions that authorities considered harmful to both matrimonial order and the political stability of the realm. These punishments reveal a society that operated according to principles very different from our own. Female adultery was seen not only as a breach of personal commitment, but as a threat to the established social order. The severity of these punishments reflected the importance that medieval society attributed to maintaining matrimonial structure. The brutality of these methods was not accidental, but calculated to maintain social order through public examples. They represented a justice system that prioritized deterrence and order maintenance over individual considerations of proportionality or humanity. More than 500 years later, these historical practices help us understand the evolution of concepts of justice and human rights. They demonstrate how entire societies can accept practices that later generations will consider unacceptable. Most significantly, it is important to recognize that these were not aberrations committed by extremist individuals, but legal punishments approved by organized societies. Judges, religious authorities, and citizens actively participated in these systems, convinced of their necessity and moral legitimacy. The transformation of medieval Europe into our modern society represented not only technological evolution, but a fundamental revolution in concepts of human dignity and proportionality in justice. The study of these historical periods reminds us of the importance of protecting the advances achieved in human rights. These historical practices serve as important reminders about how justice systems can evolve and about the constant need to critically examine our own contemporary practices. History teaches us that what one era considers normal, another may consider completely unacceptable. Understanding these historical periods helps us better appreciate the principles of humanitarian justice that our society has developed over the centuries, and reminds us of the responsibility to continue protecting and perfecting these fundamental values.